to get going on the next set of upgrades for our Mark 7R. And it all starts with this 525 liter per hour low pressure fuel pump. So let's get to work. So the first step here is to remove the seat bottom cushion, which just pull it up and then away from the backrest. There should come right out. And after that, you're going to have to access the fuel pump. The Golf R, it is on the passenger side, and GTI the same. And if you look at this cover for it, you're gonna see these marked 3 sections. You slide a screwdriver right underneath and you pop that clip out, and then this cover will lift right off. And that's how you access the fuel pump. Your next step will be to remove the 2 connectors here and then undo the fuel line. It's got a clip that you just press onto the front of it and it pops right off. And then you need to undo the retaining ring before you can pull the entire assembly out. So the retaining ring, you just take a screwdriver such as this, and you lock it into there. Then you just tap it, something like a mallet, and rotate this. So you rotate it counterclockwise to undo it, and then you can remove it, and then you can remove the assembly. Here's the assembly once pulled out on the Golf R. You'll notice that on the Golf R, because it has a divided fuel tank, you have 2 lines that you also have to disconnect once you're pulling this out, so don't yank on it too hard. And those lines are inside the tank. And you also have a connector that you need to disconnect on the back side here. Goes right there, so don't yank on it just as you're pulling it out. One last thing is that this level sensor, there is a float inside the tank, and that float I recommend just pulling it off before you pull it out of the tank assembly or rather out of the tank itself, so you don't do any damage. So now that the top hat here has been pulled away from the pump assembly, the drilling of the plastic rivets needs to happen. So you can see them right here. There's 1 and 2, and then there's a 3rd one here. Specifically on the Golf R, you've got this extra tube, which is from the transfer pump that pushes fuel into the bucket of the primary pump. And you can just pull this off. So another little gotcha for the Golf R. Then you have much better access to these plastic rivets to drill out. So after you drill do the small drill bit, the 6.5 millimeter through the top, then you can just break the rest of these plastic rivets at the bottom, the larger drill bit. Make sure you don't go too hard on it, or too deep on it rather. You'll feel them pop and break just as they break off. And after all that, you're able to just pull and separate the pump assembly from this lower section of the basket. At this point, you should have the 3 holes that you can see right here. 1, 2, and 3. And they should be really nice and clean. And now is a good time to really clean your bucket here and to admire just how much sand and crud your OEM filter and pump have collected over the years. After you've done your dremeling of the pump support here, it should look something like this, with this section of the support dremeled off about 5 to 6 millimeters. This is the siphon adapter, so press fit this on, it will snap into place, and I know it takes a little bit of force, but once it's on there on the siphon, to bring it to the correct height, you'll know it's on there sturdy and not leaking. A big gotcha with this install that got me is that this spacer here has to really be pressed in, so look carefully at how far this is pressed in for the CTS pump. If you don't press this enough, the other spacer will seem too short for the bolts, and then the pump will not sit correctly. So make sure that this siphon spacer is pressed in all the way and bottoms out. We ran into an issue where the kit, as it comes with the filter on, will not sit low enough into the bucket, and it will not sit low enough into the bucket for the spacers to basically butt up against the pump housing and the bucket itself. So initially I thought that it was this little spacer here on the siphon, but after pressing that in, realized it's not the issue, and then you're faced with the option to potentially run without this filter. And judging by how our OEM filter looked, that's not going to speak well for the longevity of this pump. So taking it apart, you realize that here, the pump with the spacer provided and the O-ring actually sits right up, and you can see that right up against the electrical connectors, and it will not go any further. There's an O-ring, of course, in there, but that's as far as it sits. So now, in order for us to fit this on with this particular supplied filter, we need to make some modifications, and we're gonna make some modifications to this connector here to push the pump a little bit higher, and we might also need to cut off some of this end here for it to fit, so off of the outlet of the pump. After plugging this up and doing some work with the Dremel, I was able to shave off a good amount, as you can see, around this electrical connector. And now, when I assemble it, the pump will recess quite a bit further up into the assembly. So I'm just gonna assemble it right now, put the spacer back in and the O-ring, and then we'll see how well it sits. So now we got the O-ring and the spacer back in here. You can see how much further it sits up because we've taken away that electrical connector, and we're gonna assemble it in the bucket, see how it sits now, and if need be, we can even have a little bit more room to shave off of that electrical connector to have it recess up even higher into the assembly and not sit right at the bottom and not make contact at the bottom of the bucket. Hopefully it all comes together nicely now. So the assembly is together for the Golf R after the trimming of the top, and also we have to trim a whole bunch more in here where the level sensor goes. And you can see that if you make the spacers bottom out, you can even see that there's a little bit of a deflection at the bottom. That filter is pressed right up against the bottom. A little bit of deflection, as long as you're not interrupting flow, is okay. Looking at the filter, it is just the support that you're pressing down on the bottom with of the pump, but it is an extremely tight fit to get this 525 in here. And of course, after we assemble it, make sure that you check the range of motion of your level sensor, because you can see right there that it's catching on the side of the bucket, and that's another little bit of trim that we're gonna have to do. Finally, everything moves as it should. All the plastic clearancing has been done and the assembly is ready to be put back in. Now keep in mind that you're putting in a much larger fuel pump. That means a much larger current draw from the controller. So you need to have this appropriately tuned for. You can't just drop this pump in and expect it to work. You will likely blow fuses and or overheat the controller. So have the tuning on hand or ready to go when you install such a pump. And here's another big advantage to multi-port injection. With multi-port injection, you add a low side fuel pressure sensor. So now you're not blindly just letting the PRV in here vent off excess fuel pressure without knowing what the actual pressure is. With the cob axis port, we're able to target exactly what the pressure we want on the low side if you have MPI, and use a feedback control loop to maintain it there and not overdrive the larger pump when the additional fuel is not needed.